Hey guys, this is Rick coming at you with Weed to No Basis, the podcast for all things cannabis business related. Are you an entrepreneur? Have something you wanted to create, something you wanted to bring to life in the cannabis industry? Maybe you've always wanted to partake in one of the biggest industries in modern day history. This is the podcast to listen to. Guys, we're live. We're here and we're actually both in South Texas. I'm going to make an introduction here in just a second. But remember guys, if you're listening to this or watching this, because some of you are watching this on YouTube or WeedTube or across our Wistia channels or wherever. But if you're listening or watching, remember, it's because you are on a weed to know basis. And today, guys, I got to tell you, I'm pumped all the time, but I'm extra pumped because there's a superstar on board. So I'm going to introduce guys, and I don't want to read her intro. I'm going to let her do it because she's that good. Her name is Deb Gabor of Soul Marketing in Austin, Texas. Deb, take the mic and tell us who you are, what you do, how you serve the community.
All right. Well, I really appreciate that introduction. And I love that you said that I was a superstar. I had always wished that someday I would get interviewed by Oprah and she would introduce me and say, "It's Deb Gabor." So this is, almost the second best thing. So a little bit about myself. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Soul Marketing in Austin, Texas. What?
Yeah.
And we are in the business of creating this condition I call irrational loyalty. And what irrational loyalty is a connection that's so strong between your company and your brand and your customers that they'd feel like they were cheating on you if they were to choose an alternative. And my belief is that this condition of irrational loyalty, which allows you to charge a premium for your product, create a sustainable, healthy company that is highly extensible and will last for a really long time and continue to return profits to you, that condition is available to every kind of company. So I'm a brand strategist. I've also written 2 best-selling books on branding. One is called Branding is Sex. I'll show you the cover right here. And later, hopefully, we'll talk about how branding is like sex. And the other one is called Irrational Loyalty. I also like dogs. But yeah, you can get both of those books on Amazon or any place that you buy books. But I'm a student of branding. I'm a student of the world. I'm a student of business, and I'm an entrepreneur myself. And I'm really excited to be here and share these messages and tools and tactics and stories with this audience, because this is an industry I'm super passionate about. And I think there's so much incredible opportunity. And branding is what is going to help organizations really stand out, especially when this industry is like sort of on a huge upswing.
You're right. And so just so you all know, for those of you who are watching, if I look down, I'm not texting. I take a ton of notes all the time. So I'm looking down at my notes. So full disclosure, just so the audience knows, that Deb and I, we go back. We have a little bit of a history, and I mean business history. Don't let the book title of Branding is Sex start to skew your mind, but it's okay to be creative. So we've been a part of, the interesting thing is, we've been a part of the same peer-to-peer group or mastermind group for years, and that's how we got to know each other. And just to give you guys context of what Deb is talking about, is, as you all know, we bring the creme de la creme here. We bring the folks on who have been there, done that. Some of them own the t-shirt company. But Deb, she was, I love the intro, but to give you guys something to hang your hat on, her company is a 7-figure business and beyond. So she's eclipsed the $1 million mark. As you saw, the 2 books. And the funny thing is, and then I'm going to ask you some questions, Deb, is before we came on live, we were catching up a little bit and we were talking about sex and dogs. And so so now the audience knows why we were talking about sex and dogs, because you've written 2 killer books. And I actually have my copies here on my desk as well. But so tell me something, because I'm curious. How long have you been at this game of branding and marketing and creating that messaging for companies?
I have been doing some form of marketing or messaging, positioning, branding, literally for my entire adult life. So, when I hit the ground running at 21 years old in my first marketing job in a big corporation in the technology business, and I worked in super, super high tech, like I worked at AT&T Bell Labs. It doesn't get more high tech than that. Like literally the people who I was working with were engineers who had won Nobel Prizes for, engineering and design and scientific discoveries and stuff. And I grew up in the tech industry. So I literally have been doing this my entire life. I have been an entrepreneur owning my own company since 2003, which seems like a geological epoch. And maybe those 2 figures, having done this for 30 years and then also owned a company for now going on 16. My company's going to have its sweet 16 birthday this fall. It tells you a little bit about how long I've been at it. So owning my own company for, almost half my career now.
Nice. And because of the way the cannabis industry is exploding, it almost makes sense to want to serve that community. Kind of like what we pivoted from mentoring, coaching, advising traditional companies into full on 110% cannabis. And so you've made that transition and done it very well. And I know that for a fact because you've worked with, you have delivered content and stuff to a lot of our clients that are in our mastermind. So, Sweet 16. I love that. I love the way the way you speak. It actually starts planting seeds, and I start to have pictures form in my mind. And I think that's a beautiful thing about storytelling, because whether you do it intentionally or not, I'm starting to form pictures in my mind as you're talking about stuff. So
you're drinking my Kool-Aid, you're taking the drug, so to speak, which, the whole reason that branding is important is that it lights up those same parts of the brain. So when I tell you a story and I evoke a feeling for you, when I talk about like our sweet 16 birthday, you immediately go to Susie Jones's sweet 16 birthday and the memories around that and whatever. And you put yourself into the story. And now you put yourself into the story of my brand. You put yourself into the story of my story, and you're there. That actually lights up the limbic system and different parts of your brain that give you the feels, right? And so that's the essence of branding. So like you're drinking the elixir, and you're getting it. And that's one of the things that I want to get across to people, especially companies in this industry. My background in the technology industry, like it's no coincidence that I'm also interested in the cannabis industry, because there are some similarities. When I first started in the tech industry back in the early 90s, I have seen like 2 or 3 different comings of technology and the internet and, sort of the next generation of digital technologies. And what it all has in common is that each time it's like the wild, wild west. And what we see is like a whole bunch of brands coming to market, and then a couple rising to the top and being the ones that become really profitable, highly extensible, and creating that condition of irrational loyalty. And what I want to do in the cannabis industry is really help ignite those brands with the potential to become one of the best brands in the world, giving them a leg up by giving them some of the information they need and the strategies and tactics that will help them leapfrog their competition and compete, not just to be different, but to be truly, truly unique, because that's what makes a winning brand.
Yeah. Would you say that branding is, I have an answer and I have my take on this. Would you say that branding is one of the top maybe 2 or 3 things that a company should be focused on, and that there is beyond sales and metrics and numbers, that the actual brand, which sometimes is intangible, it's something that, like you said, provokes thought or pictures, is that as powerful as people believe it or think it is?
I think branding is absolutely one of the most important things that you need to undertake as a company, really at any stage. And it's even more important for early stage companies to go through the process of branding. And when I talk about branding, it's really important to differentiate. There's branding with a big B, which is what I do. And there's branding with a little b, which is what like a graphic designer might do, or somebody who designs a logo or packaging, or maybe even puts together a website. The big B branding is like big S strategy, not big ass strategy, but big S strategy, which is really understanding like ultimately who are you for? Like who is your ideal customer? What are they trying to achieve for their life? And how do you infiltrate that and make them a hero in their own story, elevating their self-concept, making them the winner? The shortcut on branding is your brand is about other people. It's not about you, right? Your brand is about them. It's not about you. And, I think I've said this before. I'm like, go look at your company website, or, go look at your sell sheet and whatever. And if the first word on it is your company name or the word we, you're starting out wrong. You're just doing it wrong, because your brand is about other people. The reason why it is so important is because that big B branding, that strategic branding that we do and that I talk about and that I write about, It's an alignment exercise. It gets everyone on the same page. Who are we for? Why do we exist? What is the ultimate benefit that we provide to people? How do we articulate ourselves in the marketplace? How do we show up? What do we look like? What do we sound like? How do we talk? What kind of pictures do we use? What kind of activities and experiences are there for people to come into close contact with our brand? And what is ultimately the emotion and the connection that we're going to create? So I agree, it's an essential activity. The earlier you think about it and the earlier you start it, the better off you're going to be. Because one of the things that I've seen, especially in the technology markets that I've been involved in, is that brands will go to market without thinking about these things. And then all of a sudden they're in a situation where the brand is all over the place, or the brand has taken on a life of its own, and they have to backtrack, and then they're reinventing themselves, and they lose all of the equity that they previously had built in the brand. Does that make sense?
It does. So let me ask you this. I took a lot of nuggets from that. And if you guys at home are listening, not driving, hopefully you have your pen and paper out too, because I took some things out of that. And one of them I want to ask you just as a segue is, so all that being said, everything you said, when should a company begin to think about their brand with a capital B, not logo, font, and color, but the capital B? I love that, capital B brand. When should they be thinking about that?
I think that companies should be talking about big B brand, that strategic brand, at the same time that they are doing things like documenting their mission, their vision, their values, their core purpose. When they're going through the strategic foundation of building the company, they should also be thinking about the brand, because for all intents and purposes, a brand is all of those things inclusive of your customer. So mission, vision, values, core purpose, core values, like all of those things should include your customer and the conversation about the customer from the very, very start. I recommend that organizations start thinking about it, because the worst thing that happens to early stage companies in my mind, aside from cash flow issues and production issues and all that kind of stuff, but really from a marketing perspective, is when somebody asks you the question, what do you do? Right? I know, what do you do, or what does your company do, or whatever. And there's always a lot of stammering, we are la, 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 la. And the best organizations in the world are the ones that communicate from a place of purpose and passion and why they exist and the ultimate benefit that they provide to customers and to humanity. Those are the ones that have the most memorable stories, the most memorable pitches, the ones that drive the strongest connections. Just in the way earlier when I mentioned, my company's having its Sweet 16, you put yourself in that story. If you know right out of the gate how to tell the story of your company in a way that puts whoever is listening to that story into the story and activate that part of the brain that impacts decision making, you're just that much further ahead than everyone else. Because when organizations want to go to market and market themselves on functional differentiators like bigger, faster, better, smaller, thinner, more technological, like all of these things, I call them the ITties, like reliability, availability, scalability, manageability, like anything that ends in an ITY or anything that ends in an ER, smaller, faster, bigger, whatever. When you go to market on those things, as soon as you put that out there in the world and it can be imitated, 100% it will. Even if someone can't steal your locked down intellectual property or your designs, or your patents or anything like that, there could be a competing product that will come to market like a dark horse out of nowhere that's going to offer the same benefit, right? And if you're marketing on the basis of bells and whistles and features and options, you are opening yourself up. You're in fact inviting competition. So that's why I say getting the branding right from the start, being able to tell the story in a way that connects with your most important, most profitable customer, puts them in the story, elevates them, helps them understand why. That will block out competition from marketing on your attributes. And that's that whole idea of irrational loyalty. It's the reason why companies like Apple can still charge $1,000 or more for an iPhone, even when there's competing technology from competitors like Samsung or even Google that offer superior functionality, that offer more durability, are more available. They're easier to get, they cost less, yet people are going to buy the iPhone over and over and over again because of all the things that have nothing to do with the phone itself.
something emerged as you're talking, and it's one sentence. It's facts tell, stories sell. And that's everything you've shared is basically the essence of facts tell, stories sell. And even we can distill it down to that sentence, but the way you described it really helps that early stage cannabis startup think about what that sentence means. And the way you explained it of bells, whistles, features, benefits, those are the facts. And you're right, 110%, 120%, that can be ripped off and duplicated. That's what you call R&D in the entrepreneur world. You can steal those, and that's how companies often grow. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's ethically doing it. But it's the thing that that sets companies apart is that story. And that's really, really what you're alluding to, is understand that story. And oops, my phone's ringing. So understand.
I can confirm it's not me. I'm not calling you.
No, we have a secret text chain going on, folks. So we're feeding each other info here. No, like even the title of your book, get your customers laid and sell the hell out of anything. If you're listening to this, guys, and you just say that title in your head over one more time, get your customers laid and sell the hell out of anything, just by virtue of that title alone, branding is sex. Why would you not want to work with a company like Deb? That's something powerful there. And that title, oh my gosh, does it evoke all kinds of things right now?
That's right. I sometimes start off keynote presentations with certain audiences. This is okay. I have everybody in the audience. I'm like, all right, everybody, close your eyes. I want you to think about the last time you had a toe-curling, mind-blowing orgasm, right? Who were you with? Where were you? Like, what were you drinking or smoking or eating beforehand? You know, what's the environment? What was the situation? All that kind of stuff. And I can look out over an audience of several hundred people and see people reliving their last orgasm, right? And then, you know, when I have everybody come to and they make eye contact with me again and they're like sort of shifting in their chairs and they're a little bit nervous, then we can talk about like that feeling that it evokes, that idea that, you know, when you are in this sort of heightened sense of mind, body, spirit connection, it can be deeply emotional. It can also be functional. It can be mental, all of that kind of stuff, but it feels really, really effing good. I mean, if you're doing it right. But this idea that you feel elevated, you know, the best brands in the world are the ones that can give people that feeling. And so just even the book, Branding is Sex, Get Your Customer Laid and Sell the Hell Out of Anything, you know, that explains everything that you're going to read in the book and how branding is like sex. And I think a really, really good book called The Four by Scott Galloway explains kind of, you know, the power behind the four biggest companies in the world. And in the chapters about Apple, one of the things that he talks about, he said, you know, like Google occupies a certain area of the body, Microsoft occupies an area of the body, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, whatever. Basically what he says is like, as you move down the body, Apple owns the genitals. And as you move down the body, the margins get bigger. Like when you put people into a situation where they feel like they do when they have an orgasm, or, you know, puts them in a situation where they feel like they're invincible, they're on top of the world and like they could get laid if they wanted to, you know, that's the essence of branding. And so it's cheeky and fun, but there, you know, there's brain science behind it, there's storytelling behind it and all that kind of stuff. And so when people ask me like how and why is branding like sex, it comes from my background working in, you know, highly industrial and technical industries. Sometimes it's hard to cut through to people who are thinking about speeds and feeds and features and benefits and bells and whistles. You know, I can stop them in their tracks and say, all right, let's change the storytelling about this product or this service or this business. And this is true for B2C and B2B brands. I can say, all right, let's just stop everything. At the end of the day, how does this whatever get that guy or that gal laid? And then what I see is a lot of rolling back of the chairs, right? And people are like, oh, okay, I totally get it. So that's, you know, that's where this idea of branding is sex, like where did it come from? The shortcut for understanding like what is the role of branding and how to do branding is to just stop everything and ask the question, how does this get that guy laid? I mean, ultimately that's what it's about. And so, you know, there's lots of really good information and case studies and very tactical information for how to do this and, you know, how to validate it and verify it. But that idea of branding is sex, that's the whole story behind it.
Gotcha. And then, in a sense, what to use the analogy of Apple owns the genitals, and then so what that means is once you own that, you own that. Like
Yes.
the brand then owns everything that goes with it: the decisions, the consciousness, the continuous spending money, if you will, because that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about building brands in the cannabis industry, and let's make no bones about it, so that you can make more sales, create more revenue, create more wealth, and help the greater good. And branding, to go back to an earlier question, it's probably one of the top 2 or 3 things, if not the number one thing, besides having a product or service, that a company should be focused on. And from what you said, almost from the beginning, right?
Yeah, definitely. This idea of irrational loyalty, again, being something that makes your brand highly extensible, makes it really, really profitable, increases the loyalty among your customers, increases customer lifetime value, blocks out competition, all of those things. Like building that condition of irrational loyalty happens from the start of branding, like from the very, very beginning. And I think that you summed this up really well when you talked about like a brand being like the story, and telling the story. Stories sell, right? Features tell, stories sell. Your brand is like this instant shortcut story that tells users everything they need to know about the use of the product. Like I work in an office where I have a big picture window and I'm overlooking a busy street, and I see several thousand cars drive by every day that I'm here, right? And I see a BMW 5 Series drive by, I see a Ford F-150 pickup drive by, I see a Cadillac Escalade drive by. Instantly, I know something about the driver of each of those cars just from what they drive. And so, think about your brand being this, it is this embodiment of who you are. Brands are part of people's identity, right? And, in this industry, I think even more so in this industry, where, there's this rapid accelerated growth happening. It is a free for all right now. And everybody's trying to like stake out a claim. Knowing exactly how to permeate somebody's identity and become part of who they are is what is going to give you the longest term advantage, honestly.
Yeah. And I love the car analogy, because you're right. I was, as you were talking, I was kind of thinking, I'm going to try and pull a cannabis analogy, but it's such a free for all. I don't believe at this point there's any true brand alliance or any true brand, like I'm committed to this one brand. But using the car analogy, so you're exactly right. So when you're saying that, when I think of a Subaru, I think of a dog lover, because the commercials talk about dogs and all this, and then
because the Subaru is selling love. Like that's the brand. Like the Subaru is selling love. And in the category that Subaru is in, you also have Jeep, you have a variety of, other sort of like rugged SUV brands and all that kind of stuff. But Subaru stands out because it's about love. It's about family. It's about dogs. It's about, it's less about the journey. It's more about the people you're taking the journey with. Like it's instantaneous. That's the idea of the brand. And it's something that helps you stand out, especially in a category where people rarely have the faculties to be able to discern the difference between one and the other, right? Cannabis industry, like extremely important, whether you're a retailer, whether you're selling product, you're selling a service, you're selling B2B stuff or whatever. There's like so much to look at, and none of it is really, really clear from a buyer's perspective. People aren't afraid to buy stuff. People are afraid to look stupid. A brand sort of prevents that whole, like people feeling like they're looking stupid for making the wrong decision of the horse that they're going to ride into the cannabis race. Right?
Yeah. So a brand, especially now in the nascent stages of this industry, of the green rush, if you will, because there are no, let's say, leaders. There's a few companies that can likely be pointed to, especially on the CBD side, but there's really not a whole lot. A development of a brand and a brand strategy on how to get your customers laid and sell the hell out of anything green related is a real opportunity to become the category leader.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So, when I think about, the brands that we love and the brands that are category leaders, they're the ones, they have the biggest financial footprint, right? The brand is a major contributor to the overall valuation of those companies. The brand itself has a lot of equity and goodwill built into it. being sort of the category leader, being the gold standard in a category is such an advantage, because the best brands in the world are the ones that people can mention off the top of their head. So, think about all of these different categories within the green space. If you strive to be the category leader in that space, you can't do that if you don't have a brand, or you might become the de facto brand. I often tell people the allegory of Uber and Lyft, right? And a lot of people, I ask them the question, and your audience is probably all straight A students. They're pretty astute, but I always ask the question. I'm like, okay, so the category of ride sharing, who created that? Do you know, Rick?
I would say Uber.
It was Lyft. So Lyft actually created the category. Uber was in the black car business. They were just like a limousine, they were like a limousine company, etc. Lyft created the category. Uber perfected it and owned it. And, they take credit for owning and creating the category because they were better at branding, and they're now the de facto standard, to the point that we don't just go someplace, we Uber someplace, right? You take a Lyft, but you Uber somewhere. You don't Lyft somewhere, right? And, I tell that story because a lot of people, they see it happening in front of them, but they don't understand the power of brand. And so, Uber was able to be given the official ownership of that category because Lyft gave it up to them. And that, that's the power of brand. Does that make sense? Why,
No, it does. No, it does. And these are great nuggets for the folks listening and watching to take heed of and take note of, because I honestly thought Uber was the creator of the category, to hear that Lyft was. And then it was really, let's just say, brand development and owning that and grabbing mind share. That is likely the reason, you're right, why we say, I'm going to get an Uber. And we might say get an Uber and actually hit the Lyft app.
Yeah, that's right. Or I'm going to Uber someplace, which just means you're going to take whatever random ride happens to show up. Whoever's not on surge pricing right now, right?
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
You know what those are? That's like, wow. Let me ask you something. Because you mentioned something and you said the words biggest financial footprint. And a lot of times when we think of brands as big B or little b, branding however, this is not a judgment for the startups out there, because often we think of a brand as little b, of let me get a cool logo, coloring, my palette, design a website. But that's the little b. And we were talking about the big B, the way we really get our customers laid. And I'm going to keep saying that. But
you like that, don't you?
I do. It's stuck. And I think that's the beauty of the brand you created, is that it's now just stuck. And for better, for worse, I don't know. But so again, if we're talking to startups, whether they're early stage or they're maybe in their first year, or they're just beginning to churn some revenue, I'm curious, and again, we don't have to dive into your pricing models, but what is a general outlay? Because we've already agreed and established that a brand should be part of your startup plan. It should be development of that big B. What should a startup be thinking about as far as capital expenditure, like developing that big B brand in general?
In general, if you take like the visual ID stuff out of it, because there's lots of ways to get that visual identity stuff done, pretty low cost. If you plan up front, and do the strategic piece really, really well, you can have better results from lower cost options on the visual identity side. I would say plan to spend anywhere from, if you're really serious about this, plan to spend anywhere from like $5,000 to potentially $100,000. And the $100,000 mark probably sounds like really, really scary. But if you're investing money in R&D, and you're investing money in innovation and intellectual property and things like that, brand can also kind of be part of that discovery and that investigation as well. If you're doing any kind of market research, on the high end, the $100,000 would be if you did an extensive market study, like a huge quantitative study and a bunch of focus groups or online focus groups or online discussion groups or things like that to get data and get research to inform the brand. That would be sort of on the high end for an early stage company. For instance, I offer a service called 8-Hour Brand, which is like a $10,000 one and done kind of thing. Like, get this important strategic initiative done in 1 8-hour day. And I've done it for a couple of companies in this industry where we brought 2 or 3 companies together and had them split the day. And so it can be, really, it can be cost effective, but there's a lot of resources out there that will teach you exactly how to do this. I do recommend, for the cost of a paperback book or a Kindle or an Audible, this is a how-to book. And, you can give it a whirl on your own. Often having that sort of third-party person to give you a big kick in the ass and help you answer the questions in a really strategic, thoughtful, and differentiated way can be helpful. But there are courses online, like on Udemy and, platforms like Teachable. There are tons of people who are out there sort of teaching these methodologies where, for the cost of I offer one for less than $300. There's a variety of these things. I've seen courses listed for $30 that are pretty good and have digital downloads associated with them that can help people facilitate their own teams through these processes. So it ranges, there's a great range, but like I said, you can go all the way from the cost of a paperback book or a Kindle book all the way up through, $100,000 or whatever. What do I recommend early stage companies should plan on spending? I think you should, between the strategy part of it and getting the visual identity done, I think that a good amount of money is going to be $20,000 or less for the whole thing.
Gotcha. That's very fair. And I really appreciate that, giving the range. And some things for the companies out there to think about is some of you all, and this is with all love and respect, have more money than time right now. And that's understood. In startups, we're maybe cash strapped or bootstrapped, but some companies have more time than money. It's more money than time. And those may be the companies that are at a certain stage. And so I love the range you gave, because you're right. Somebody can grab your book and you can see almost kind of like a blueprint or how to, and it can be executed. Or for the folks who choose to, they can, go to try the 8-Hour Brand, or even bring you guys. And so to give some folks real context is several years ago, one of our clients decided to, because with what we do with Green Seed, we help with strategic vision planning, execution, accountability, things like that. But when it comes to some of the things like specifically branding with the big B, that's not our skill set. So we had a client several years ago, and to give our listeners and viewers context, this was a CBD startup, and they allocated I think it was about a $55K spend, and that was for the big B. For branding. So I really appreciate that, because it could easily have gotten to a 6-figure spend, but it could have been, let's just get a book and do it ourselves. And so it's beautiful, because that company was right in the range. It was about a $50K spend, and it was a lengthy process. This wasn't a one and done. This was a discovery process. And so to give folks a context, it's not a one day, let's go meet with Deb and let's talk about our brand and boom, we've got one. This was a road that learning, growing, and developing that brand, the messaging, right?
Yep. And so, just to give that even more context, when we work in my company, when we work with early stage companies that do want to invest significantly in brand, the average size of that initial branding project is between $50,000 and $75,000. What it involves is usually a quantitative research study with at least, several hundred quantitative responses, because they're also trying to do things like forecast demand, or identify and size a market opportunity, or segment a population, or do some targeting. And it also involves some qualitative research in the form of focus groups and small group discussions, or online qualitative research. And then, sort of this very, very in-depth discovery process. I can also say that those engagements take You know, I can speak for my company, but they take anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks, depending on how extensive that research is and, you know, how long it takes to actually get responses. Things like this in the consumer world, they go a lot faster because it's a lot easier to find consumers than it is to find business purchase influencers. But $50,000 to $75,000 if you want to go through that process. If you go through 8-hour brand or, you know, a 1-day workshop like that, I give you the homework to go and do your own discovery and bring it with you. Right. So you're still doing it, but what you get is the benefit of having an expert in the room to facilitate the process. I will say this for early stage companies, there's 2 ways to do branding. There's the way that we're talking about, you and I, Rick, like that you're, you know, that one of your portfolio companies went through and you've probably experienced in the kind of work that I do, which is a very strategically focused big B brand development. There's another way. If you hire outside help, you can go to a number of different agencies that say that they do branding, and they do branding, but they don't use this kind of methodology. What they do is they might do some discovery and then they'll go away and they'll come back with concepts and they'll say, hey, we did all this discovery. Here's the research. Here's what we learned. Here's the white space we identified. Here's 1, 2, 3 ideas for brand concepts. Pick one. Some companies don't have the stomach to go through what I put them through or what a company like mine would put you through, which is like, we're going to make you do the hard work. Like one of our core values as an organization is we do hard things because the work of branding is hard. It's about choice, right? And it's more not choosing what you're going to do. It's choosing what you're not going to do. And that's hard for people and they like the other method. So both are available to people. But just when you are like, as an organization, you are considering like different ways to get this branding work done, you might come across people who have that approach of, we'll do the discovery, we'll do all the homework and all that kind of stuff, and then we'll present options to you. It's valid. It's just not what I do. Right?
Yeah. I love it. So a couple things, some things I'm picking up as you're putting it down is one is the whole branding and the messaging and the rationale, the reason why you must have it. If a company wants to just survive, don't watch this episode. If a company in the cannabis space wants to survive and thrive and lead, then this is an absolute must. But beyond what we're talking about, specifically branding with the big B, and this is something for folks out there who are listening, startup mode, or you're ready to run and gun, is take note. So Deb mentioned core values, and she mentioned one of them is hard work, and we've talked about that. We've talked about in previous episodes, that's a fundamental element, a foundational element of your business. It's one of the things beyond your brand that we've mentioned, attracts and repels your customers and people you don't want. It's a hiring and firing tool. And then take note that Deb earlier talked about strategy. Branding is part of a strategy. It's not the standalone pillar that you can hang everything on. It's huge, but it's part of a go to war, go to market, go to win strategy. And you've mentioned some things that allude back to business, entrepreneurship fundamentals, and I don't want those to go unnoticed to our audience. So we're talking specifically about branding, big B, but you've hit on some tactical fundamentals that I'm going to go on a limb and say, I bet your company practices probably.
Okay.
As well. Yeah, I mean, you have core values, right?
Yeah, we have core values. Yep.
Yeah.
We have core values. We have a mission. We have a vision. We have KPIs. We have targets. We do quarterly strategic planning. We do execution sprints. We have open and shared accountability in our organization. Everybody knows exactly what everybody's working on and what they're responsible for. It creates that structure, sort of that business management and leadership structure, kind of having an operating system for business is something that's given us the freedom to be more creative and more innovative and, grow faster. I can't recommend it more highly, but being part of a core values driven organization and then layering on, beyond the strategic framework, layering on an execution framework and accountability means that we are extremely aligned as a company. And it is very apparent who's in the boat and who's not. Makes it really easy to hire, coach, fire, promote, everybody in the organization, because it's open, it's shared, it's documented, it's, you know, sort of the foundation for growth. I will say, like, here's a plug for like having an underlying strategy that everybody is part of developing and also aligned with and bought into, and then putting an execution framework on top of it that helps you with the major things of business, like people and cash and, you know, all of these different things. My company, just in the last year, we have grown 41% in top line revenue, which is great. I mean, we had a forecast of 30%, but more importantly, we have increased our profitability by 116% since this time last year, just by like leaning in really hard to that structure. So, you know, it's rare in my industry, like being a marketer and running an agency, it's rare to apply those principles of entrepreneurship and business to a business like mine. I will say, like, you know, we're the poster child for that. And so, like, if I could get a plug in for, you know, entrepreneurs to like really pay attention to this. And I don't care what methodology you use, you know, whatever books you read, whatever method you use, it doesn't matter. Having that strategic foundation, having an executional framework, having KPIs, accountability, and ultimately alignment, and your brand is part of it, is kind of the system for success. I got on somebody on Instagram today who posted something like, I call it failure porn, which is like, you know, here's the story of this entrepreneur who failed like 45,000 times before he actually got it right. You know, he lost hair, he gained weight, he lost his wife, you know, he suffers from erectile dysfunction, whatever the sad story is. And then finally he had a success. I'm more interested, and Rick, you're probably more interested. I want to hear the stories of the people who did the strategy right from the start, learned from the masters and the experienced people who have built successful enterprises like yourself, like me, like, you know, like the other experts in the world, and then put into practice the same strategies and tools that they used so that they can minimize the risks of failure, rather than like failure porn. Like, I want to celebrate strategy, I want to celebrate structure, and I want to celebrate like open, shared accountability and success. And I don't think there's enough of that. So I'm the biggest cheerleader for, you know, what you're doing, Rick, with the businesses that you support. And I'm not in your program, but like in my own world, 16 years in business, like this is the biggest hockey stick growth that we've had, you know, especially during this period when we rededicated ourselves to that stuff. So like my company behave like a very, very well-run startup right now, rather than a 16-year-old company.
Love it. I love that. So what you just ended with was, now I view your company as still this young teenager hungry for more, as opposed to this 60 to 70. Yes, still hungry and out there and running and gunning, but with strategy and values and all those things. I love it. I could continue talking to you about this for a long time, and I'm going to have to just say this while we're talking on the recording, that I think we're going to have to do this again, but get a little more maybe tactical, like not spilling secret sauce, but actually taking these concepts and things you've painted, especially these phrases. They are stuck. Getting customers laid, failure porn, building something. But I think this is one of the few times I've asked somebody on live that we need to do this again, but actually drill down. This is good, and a lot of it is because I'm also a firm believer that a brand will set your company, your thing, apart from everybody else out there. So this is one of the critical things that I absolutely believe in. And yeah, this has been really cool. I literally have so many notes, and I don't even know where to go from here. There's just so much, but I think some of the things I'll just start to share. Then I'm going to ask you to give us your contact info, like where can folks reach you? But for those out there, is facts tell, stories sell. Remember, as you're beginning to launch or start or ideate what you want to do in the industry, product or service, plant touching or non-plant touching, is facts tell, stories sell. That is really, if I just synopsize this in a very unsexy way, that's really what this is about. Secondly, guys, is if that doesn't make sense, think about car commercials. Think about they're actually telling a story and targeting a very specific kind of person. So think about that as you're thinking about what your idea or company or launch is going to do, or what you believe it's going to do. And third is, Deb, how can folks reach out to you, or how can they get your book? Where can they find you?
So first of all, they can find me. You can go to debgabor.com. And that's my website. And there are links there to Irrational Loyalty and Branding of Sex. Again, that's what Branding of Sex looks like. Irrational Loyalty has a little dog on it. Who's more irrationally loyal than your pets?
Okay, wait, put that up again. I gotta take a screenshot of that. Hold on a sec. There it goes. Love it.
Okay. And so like you can find all of those things there. Books are available on Amazon. That's usually the easiest way to get them. Lots of local bookstores carry them as well. If you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me like directly through that Deb Gabor website. You can find me on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm just, like I'm all over all the socials, and you might be able to catch up with me in person. I speak several times a month at big entrepreneurship events and business events all over the world. I will say, I do love when people contact me where they're like, hey, I heard you on a podcast, or I read about you in a story, or, something you said in your book inspired me, and here's my idea. I invite people to contact me. There's a link directly on that debgabor.com website where you can like book a 15-minute Zoom call with me, and I will talk to you about anything you want to talk about. I mean, within reason, of course, but because, sometimes I'm doing it during the workday from my office, and that dirty talk is totally inappropriate for the workplace. #MeToo, hostile work environment. But yeah, I love when people reach out to me and they're like, whatever you just said, like that really resonates with me. Or Deb, when you said failure porn, I thought that was bullshit, whatever. So, please do reach out, and Rick, please share all my contact details with everybody, because I love to hear from entrepreneurs.
I will. So guys, for those of you who are listening or watching, we're going to put all of these in the links, in the show links down below. You can find it also on our Instagram page on Weed to Know Basis on Insta, also on Facebook. So all the links that Deb said, if you weren't able to write them down or type them in, whatever, the links are going to be there. So you will have an easily one click away from getting a hold of Deb. And just so the audience knows, I have both of your books as well. I should have had them here on my desk, but they're actually just, I have both of them.
Well, I can show them again. Here they are. Yeah. I'm really proud of these covers. I had some like really talented creative people working on those. And so, you know something about me from my brand, like from the title of the book, what you need to know about me. You know what I like, what I care about. Like every single thing I do is an embodiment of my brand and the way that you experience the brand. And so that's really what I want for everybody. Like when you see the guy in the BMW who cuts you off in traffic, like you immediately think, what, asshole, right? You don't know anything about him except for he drives a BMW, and you immediately know that's what he's about. You don't drive a BMW, do you?
No. No.
Right on. But so like that shortcut for knowing something about someone's identity through branding is ultimately what I want for everybody. Like I really, really want that for everybody.
Love it. And having known you and hearing you right now live, I can assure you guys out there that that's the truth. And that's one of the beauties of this industry, is that there's a lot of really good people who really are doing good things, who have your best interest in mind. And Deb, I want to thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I can't wait to hear from people. So thanks. I really enjoyed this conversation.
For sure. Folks, remember, as we're signing off here, we're going to put these in the show notes, ways to connect with Deb. Don't forget, you can find us on Insta and on Facebook at Weed to Know Basis. And the reason why you're here listening or watching, it's because you two are on a Weed to Know Basis. Y'all have a fantastic afternoon, morning, rest of the day life. Peace.